The Blazar Remus is an incredibly popular budget anamorphic lens, and I myself have bought into the Blazar Remus lineup. I own a 65mm in PL with amber flare, and I'm planning on buying the 35mm with those same specs as soon as it releases. But I wanted to make this video and highlight some importances that I don't think are being talked about when it comes to YouTube reviewers and the marketing that goes on behind these companies that send these lenses for free to these YouTubers to review, and some are loaners and some are for them to keep. But I just wanted to talk about that from an actual buyer's perspective, somebody who's actually spent the money and has no real affiliation with the company, what my honest thoughts are, and give that back to you because it's a $1,000 lens. These are not perfect lenses. In fact, they seem a little too cheap. I feel like they should be priced higher, and I know other YouTubers have said that. But there are some cons to these lenses that I honestly haven't seen anybody talk about in a YouTube video. Before I get into the pros and cons of this video, I really just want to dive in and talk about why you're not going to see another video like this and why this video is incredibly important. I'm going to talk about the cons of the lens. If you look on YouTube, there are almost no videos talking about the cons of the lens. They'll say, oh, it's a pro and con, and they might mention, this little characteristic you might not like, and it's just a general anamorphic characteristic. Nobody's actually talking about what's wrong with the Blazar Remus lenses. In this video, I'm gonna do that because I don't have any affiliation with Blazar. I don't have any review bias, and that's something that's becoming a serious issue on YouTube these days. It's not that money's changing hands and they're being paid to say something. In fact, YouTubers are pretty forthright with saying that that's not happening. The problem is they don't want to say anything negative, or they might glance over the negative things and just not pay attention to it because they want these companies to keep sending them cameras and lenses and accessories for free, because that's how they make their money and that's how they keep doing what they're doing. And I can't necessarily fault them for that, but it's definitely harmful to you, the viewer. Now, with that out of the way, I want to talk about this lens, why I like it, why I don't like it, and why I'm going to keep buying them. First, I want to talk about what a beauty this lens is. It is an absolute monster in terms of cost to value ratio. It's amazing that this lens is $1,000. However, it comes with some drawbacks, which I'm going to talk about kind of in conjunction with its pros, because its pros and cons are kind of intertwined in a way. First, I want to talk about the aperture. This is a T2 lens. It is super fast, and with that, it works in low light. The problem is it's unusable at T2, and nobody really wants to talk about that. On YouTube, it's kind of hard to see, and in certain scenarios, it's kind of hard to see how soft it is. But the moment you throw it up on something larger than a phone, like a computer, an iPad, or a TV, it is chromatic aberration heaven, and it is just super soft everywhere. It's like slapping on a half stop of black Pro Mist on top of your already anamorphic lens. It looks bad. It starts to get usable right around T2.8. I like to shoot between T2.8 and T4. That split is a happy medium for me. Or if you really want to clean things up, you really have to shoot close to a T5.6. And that is a huge drawback for a lot of filmmakers who like having shallow depths of field and having, more of those anamorphic characteristics. You really have to shoot faster and degrade your image a little bit in order to get there. And the problem with that comes in when you're trying to focus. It's just really difficult to get your focus on point. I find it way easier to manual focus spherical glass than anamorphic glass. And when anamorphic glass is out of focus, it looks terrible. If you have somebody's face off by a foot, it looks awful with this lens. I've used other anamorphic glass that isn't as bad, but when you're out of focus on this lens, you are out of focus, and it is near impossible to correct that in post with any kind of sharpening. You're starting to get some stretch on the face. It just looks bad. But when you do land things in focus, the background and foreground look absolutely wonderful, and I could not be happier with those results. Now, I think one of the other big pros of this lens is its squeeze factor. It is a 1.5x squeeze. Now, for Hollywood, people tend to go 2x or nothing. That tends to be the preference, and it's for an understandable reason. With open gate sensors that are 3.2 or 4.3, shooting with a 2x anamorphic lens gives you that widescreen aspect ratio, which was the original intent of anamorphic lenses. However, because of this aggressive budgeted pricing, this is definitely targeted at people with mirrorless cameras. So you're gonna see people with more 16:9 and 17:9 sensors using this, such as I am on my Lumix S5. However, it still does create a wonderful image on open gate sensors such as any of the Blackmagic full frame cameras. One of my other big pros for the lens is its size, and this comes with absolutely zero cons. It's a small, compact, anamorphic lens. It's not so small that it becomes tricky to operate with a larger setup, but it's small enough that you really have a lot of wiggle room in order to put it on a gimbal or run it in smaller setups. It can be a whole lot less hefty than using some of the big anamorphic glass. If you've seen the Atlas Orions and the Atlas Mercuries, they're huge lenses. The new Laowa Proteus lenses, I see a lot of YouTubers talking about this lens is unusable, but it's not for the individual filmmaker. This is to be used with crews. But this lens right here, this is to be used as a solo filmmaker, and it's intentionally designed that, which goes to my next pro for this lens, and it's 150-degree focus throw, which is small. If you are on a film set, that is not great. That is too small. In fact, the Sirui anamorphic adapter has a 270-degree focus throw. I think some of even the 7 Artisans spherical lenses have 310-degree focus throws because they're meant to be used on a crew with an AC whose whole job is to pull focus. And that allows for really, really accurate focus pulling. It can be tricky to focus pull with this lens sometimes, but I find whenever using a follow focus or throwing it on a gimbal, it's really easy to fine tune your focus, and it's not too hard once you get the hang of it. My biggest complaint about this lens is the fact that it flares super easily, meaning when you're in low light situations, usually when a room is lit with a bunch of tiny lights, such as, Christmas tree lights or chandeliers with multiple lights, or just a lot of small lamps around a room, everything flares up, absolutely everything. And it looks so bad because they're not very strong flares. They're really tiny, and it looks like somebody just smudged the lens and you're getting flares off of a smudge instead of an anamorphic flare. It doesn't look good. It looks really bad, and there's no way to correct those flares into looking good by stopping down your lens, which, if you didn't know that and you're new to anamorphic, stopping down your lens gives you more separated flares. They don't look as streaky, which this lens does do very well when you stop it down. I find that, again, the wider open you shoot with this lens, the worse the flares look. But again, that's personal choice and that's completely subjective. But in low light, it is objectively awful. I shot one wedding with this lens, and outside it looked great. When it was bright, it looked great. As soon as the reception hit and it got really dark, it looked awful. I changed lenses. I wanted to shoot the whole wedding on it, and I shot a lot on it, and I managed to work around my awful lit situation. Even though I had brought my own lights, I was still struggling. I managed to work around it, but I probably will never shoot a reception at a wedding or any dimly lit location with a bunch of small lights with that lens ever again. It's absolutely useless, and it looks way worse than just about any other option out there. I talked at the beginning of this video about the fact that I'm gonna continue to buy these lenses, or at least I'm gonna buy the 33. I might buy some more after that, but as of right now, I just really want the 33 because I tend to shoot either really wide or somewhat tight. So those two focal lengths kind of put me in a happy spot personally, but I don't think that I would spend more than $5,000 collecting these lenses to have the option. I don't think they're that worth it. I think if you're really trying to build yourself out as a cinematographer, you should probably lean to something like the Nisi Athenas or the DZO Vespids. I think that those are really good options if you're just trying to get some good cinema lenses. Of course, Sirui has some options out there, and so does 7 Artisans for cheaper. But I think that if you're more of an artistic DP, videographer, cinematographer, whatever you call yourself, then this is a good option for you. Just be wary of the fact that you cannot use this on everything. It shouldn't be used on everything, and it should really kind of stick to more narrative pieces. If you're gonna shoot commercials on it, more narrative commercials. It should be used for short films. It could be used on a feature film. I'm not gonna go as far to say that this lens couldn't be used on a feature film. I think it totally could. But when you have options like the Atlas Mercuries out there, I think renting those are just a better option. These hit a nice buyable prosumer price point, but they're definitely not fully fledged and built for really high-end feature film or high budget TV work. They're just not that lens. So to close out this video, I just want to say that this lens is for cinematographers who like a super stylized look and don't mind stopping down their lens. This is not a lens for everybody, but if you like the look and you've tried anamorphic before and you want something that is super stylized to kind of flesh out the different options you have as a DP or cinematographer, it's definitely a great choice to add to your collection, and I will keep doing that myself. Until next time.